Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. Senior Lakers Insider for Offside, as well as their lead Lakers creator. And today on the show, it is a Sunday, and Lakers finally don't play, which means I can finally record a mailbag episode with you guys. So we have a quick question, but a question nonetheless from the iTunes mailbag. We have a question from a couple questions from Twitter. And then that leaves plenty of room for you guys to jump in here with whatever questions that you want to leave in the chat as well. If you guys haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button, all of those good things. And then if you guys are listening to this in the morning via podcast, please hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts, preferably on Odyssey, because I am a company man. I also, before I dive into the questions and topics that you guys have for me today, I also want to talk about yesterday's game or Saturday's game, depending on when you guys are watching or listening to this. But the Lakers no-showed in Atlanta, and JJ Redick had another one of his kind of hissy press conferences afterward, and I want to talk about all of that stuff. So we're going to start there, and then I'm going to get into your guys' questions, which is also going to touch on yesterday's game as well, because I think a lot of the questions are kind of reacting to, or in part reacting to, what we saw yesterday. So that'll be kind of part of it as well. Is just kind of discussing yesterday's game, JJ Redick's reaction to that game, your guys' reactions to that game, and how it all kind of fits in together. So without any further ado, let's dive on in. So the Lakers go into Atlanta. They're riding high, 5-game winning streak. I just recorded an episode with Aaron in which I thought that, somebody could maybe make the case to me that the Lakers belong in the upper tier of Western title contender. And, there were people in the chat who were angry at me for not just outright putting them in that class of team. And that's not to say that class of team isn't capable of dropping their own stinkers. But it was kind of funny how it all played out, right? That we have that conversation. There's a reaction that I've seen to that conversation saying that I was maybe a little too low potentially on the Lakers, only to be quickly and abruptly reminded, nope, yep, that's right. This team does have a little way to go. And I thought that game really kind of reminded us that, the Lakers are still a very kind of slow team. Atlanta has a ton of youth and athleticism and wings, and they just look like a much fresher team, even though they were playing really shorthanded as well. So you couldn't even say like, well, the Lakers were missing so and so and so and so. The Hawks were missing Trae Young. They were missing Kristaps Porzingis, as well as some other players. I think Jalen Johnson is still not available for that team. I'd have to look again. But the Lakers, and there was, DeAndre Ayton said after the game that he thought that the Lakers kind of took the Hawks for granted, which, like, my dude, you were out there too. So, like, at any time, you could have maybe taken them a little less for granted. I just want to double check here. Yeah, Jalen Johnson is DNP'd as well. So, yeah, it was a really shorthanded Hawks team, and they still whooped on the Lakers up and down, and it was never close. And I'm just going to basically just kind of throw right to JJ Redick's presser here. I don't know. I think there's parts of it that I agreed with, and there were some parts of it or a a tone and tenor of it that I kind of disagree. Well, not even disagree, but would say like, yeah, nothing, he says. So um I thought a lot of that was really interesting. And so I recorded, after the game last night, I recorded my little offside video, my immediate recap to what we just watched there. And in it talked about how, look, over the course of 82 games, every team is going to have their stinkers. Every team is going to have their no-shows, their duds, whatever you want to call it. And it doesn't make those games any less frustrating. I would prefer that they just let us know when those are going to come so that I can, not watch on a Saturday night. But at the end of the day, as easy as it would be to just kind of write it off as, well, that happened and kind of move on. Um, I do think JJ Redick's instinct to say, no, fuck that. Like, we are sitting in the stink for a little while, and reacting to that thing as a group. And I thought it was also really interesting how the beat reporters, who obviously were traveling with the team and have a pretty good sense of the vibes surrounding the team, that their instinct was to say, was this just one off? Was this, what do you chalk this up to? What do you, and a lot of it was kind of looking at it as if the Lakers were kind of passengers to their own story in that game. And I think that is the incorrect instinct there. And I think JJ also disagrees with that approach to last night's game. So, like, on one hand, I agree with JJ Redick that that can't be acceptable under any circumstances ever, right? The one compliment that I would really have for the Lakers so far this season is that they do play really hard night in, night out, and they do get up for these games, and they have been competing to an extent to where they can at one point hold a 5-game winning streak. And so I do applaud JJ's instinct in that regard. Where I do think his messaging falls a little short, however, is in this just being a guy's problem or a player problem. Because, when the Lakers right now are trying to build habits that you would normally like to build in training camp and in preseason. Right now, they're trying to kind of play catch up and solidify some real cultural, foundational approach. They're trying to, they're basically trying to hold their training camp during this easier early slate. And, when you basically go through preseason and those games are just kind of considered dressed up scrimmages, then and you basically, the tone from them, or the one of the takeaways from that entire slate is that, well, winning doesn't really matter then. It's hard to flip that switch as soon as you get into the season and have that be the consistent approach to all of these games. Either winning matters or it doesn't. And that's what I always try to say during those preseason games, where the Lakers, for much of the preseason, weren't competitive, let alone winning a lot of those games. And so, yeah, I think that, with JJ there, he can have his frustration, and I share his frustration with the way that the Lakers players approach that game, and the way that they seemingly just kind of wrote it off to, oh, well, nobody's playing over there, we got this, whatever. And then, to promptly be punched in the mouth by the Atlanta Hawks. I agree that was bullshit from the guys who play the game that way, but I would also say that approach or readiness or the taking things for granted, like, those are all things that also reflect poorly on coaching. I'm a Vikings fan. The Vikings just played a home game and had 8 false start penalties. 8 of them at home. I like Kevin O'Connor quite a bit. He gives cool post-game press conferences. I think he's a QB guru. However, 8 false start penalties at home at some point has to reflect on coaching and readiness and attention to detail. And I thought last night was not just a matter of like not really caring. It was also there was a lack of attention to detail there to where some of the guys who they were leaving open weren't the guys that you want to leave open. And the Lakers basically since JJ showed up, they've basically tried to make their own 3-point shooting luck by or at least defensive 3-point shooting luck by leaving certain guys open and not adjusting, with the thought being that eventually the law of averages will play out. And it worked pretty well for the Lakers. I think their 3-point percentage shot against last year was pretty good, and this year I think it's on the same track as well. And that's one way to make up for the lack of horses or the lack of dogs that the Lakers don't have defensively. So, but still, like you do have to be very, focused on who should or shouldn't be left open. And I thought last night there were a lot of guys left open who shouldn't have been left open. And I think, when that kind of a thing happens, that is oftentimes a reflection of coaching where the tone is, well, we can leave certain guys open, but you still got to close out hard to these other guys. Well, if that but isn't hammered home hard enough, or if the interest in winning, no matter who you play or what the situation might be, isn't hammered home hard enough, that's how you arrive at your 10th game of the season being such a dud and being such a no-show act because the other team is so shorthanded. Um, so that's kind of like all I don't want to. And there are going to be questions and comments and topics, that come from the various mailbags asking about last night's game that'll allow me to expand on some of these things. But I don't know. To me, JJ Redick has shown a very consistent inability to accept any kind of accountability in the moment, right? Heading into the season, he talked about how, he's got to figure out a way to bring himself down and figure out a way to talk these things out a little bit more. And that's fine in the off season or when the temperature isn't turned up. But I think every time the temperature does turn up or the screws get tightened or, the pressure, ratchets up a little bit, I do think JJ Redick is very susceptible to emotional kind of overreaction in a way that blinds him from what is kind of going on there. And if at no point JJ Redick ever, shows any kind of willingness to accept accountability, eventually the guys are going to start tuning him out in the same way they did with Darvin Ham previously, where every game was we gave them the game plan and the game played out the way that it did, implying that the guys didn't carry out that game plan, even though anybody watching over the course of that, the especially that second season with Darvin, anybody watching could have said, well, the game plans weren't that great, coach. And there was never any kind of acknowledgement or understanding that, yeah, I could have been better here. I could have been better there. So, look, again, it's one game. For the most part, the Lakers have been a surprisingly good team. There are some concerns statistically with this team that make me a little nervous and how they profile right now. And we'll see if some of that stuff either corrects itself to where the point differential gets itself back to a point where the Lakers kind of need to be if they want to be considered one of those elite title contenders, or if the Lakers will correct themselves to the point differential that they've played at so far this season. All right. So the first comment or the first question that I have here is from A Gear 40 from the iTunes mailbag. Any chance of having Alex Regla on the show? I miss hearing him and Senator Alex Padilla. Um, Look, it's kind of a bummer here the way that it all played out, but when this feed had that show together, Talk O Tuesday, um, it had extra funding from Vox that allowed me to employ that kind of rotating cast of hosts and co-hosts the way that it did back when this was a Vox project. Now I will say that I could probably do a better job of bringing, like, I really like talking basketball with Alex. One thing that is a factor here is that since Twitter has splintered, um, I don't see as much of his work. I don't spend very much time on Blue Sky. Like I pop in on Blue Sky, I drop a link, and then I usually pop out of there. And the entire reason I ever go there is because for whatever reason I have a decent following on that app. So I basically just try to leverage that following. But I don't. I'm trying to wean myself off of social media, and the last thing I want is to find a whole new social media platform to spend too much time on. And unfortunately, that's where Alex Regla tends to post about the Lakers and post his tweets. So it is kind of an out of sight, out of mind thing. But with this being a reminder, I will reach out to Alex or find a way to reach out to Alex and see if he would like to come on the show. Because yeah, I like Alex's work. He's one of the more thoughtful Lakers people out there. He's a very creative thinker and unique thinker, and the show benefits from his appearances on it. And then from as it pertains to Alex Padilla, he is another guy that we share a Vikings fandom, and uh now he roots for the Padres, and nobody's perfect, but yeah, those are a couple of guys as well as other people. Like I do think it over the course of the season, I am going to start opening up the old Rolodex to break up some of the monotony of me just kind of talking into the camera with you kind folks. All right, let's go and dive into some of your guys's live. Well, actually, I did ask for some questions. I got to be better at this. So, all right. So from Twitter, first question comes from at Bashir41096, who writes, "Do you think Rui is a dynasty starter after you not with you kind of player on this team?" The Bashir, I'm not gonna lie, the phrasing on that makes zero sense. Do you think Rui is a dynasty starts after you not with you kind of player? Oh, I see. All right. Do you think Rui is a dynasty starts after you, not with you kind of player on this team? My bad. All right. Let's see. Yes. Yeah. Um, I like Rui. I think he is very, very, very underrated. And I think if he does go to a different team, that he will be a productive player on that team if he is slotted into the correct role. I don't think on a team with Luka and with Austin and with LeBron that Rui can be the fifth starter. It's just too slow of a team. And Atlanta really made the Lakers look slow. Portland made the Lakers look slow earlier in the season. As we get into tougher games, we're going to see some of these more athletic teams make the Lakers look slow. And I think Rui is kind of a big part in that, unless or until he accepts that he might not be a starter on this team. If he is open to accepting a bench role, with the Lakers acquiring the fifth starter who kind of supplants him there. If Rui continues to abide what the team needs and do all those things, then I will shut up. I will have no problem with Rui whatsoever at that point, because at that point, Rui coming off of the bench and helping to anchor some of those offensive units, that would be a very useful player. But so long as he considers himself a starter, which he does, he said it basically heading into the season at media day. So long as he kind of maintains that approach and or mopes whenever or if he does get moved to the bench, um, that's not a player that you have a dynasty with, or you build a dynasty with, especially when he's on an expiring contract this year, making about 18-ish million bucks. Starting in his next contract, he's probably going to be around, I would probably guess, like 20 to 25 in that range, million bucks a year. And at that point, if you're paying somebody 20 to 25 million bucks in this CBA, then I don't think that player can come off of your bench or be as inconsistent as Rui is. In that last game on Saturday, the Lakers don't have LeBron, they don't have Austin. Luka didn't quite have it in that game. So you're looking and you're like, all right, who's the guy who's going to get us going? And in terms of talent and in terms of cap hold and cap slot, next guy up should have been Rui. But unfortunately, he got out there, he played 23 minutes, and you would barely know it. He was a minus 28 on the game. That was the worst of any player who played in that game against Atlanta. So I would again love to be wrong, and I would love for Rui to accept more of a bench role than and try to thrive in it. But until I'm more confident that he would actually do that, I don't know. I still think that whether you trade him or you don't, the Lakers need a better fifth starter or fourth or fifth starter, depending on how you feel about Ayton. The next question here comes from Roundball, who is at DMax900. JJ walking out of his post-game interview showed his immaturity and lack of social skills. All he had to do was be accountable and say, I didn't have my guys ready to play tonight. He's also set a horrible example for his players, already acceptable interview conduct, and our youth. Well, I don't call me Michael Jordan because I say fuck them kids. But and I also don't think that like JJ being short in an interview is something that is going to like change the way that players interview this season. I don't think it's that serious. What I'm a lot more wary of, as I was with Darvin, and we saw how that played out with Darvin, but I'm always nervous. I always get nervous about coaches who refuse to take any level of accountability. And like, I don't know how many of you guys are college football coaches, but to me, like the nth degree example of this is Brian Kelly, who just got fired like a week or so ago by LSU. That dude, every time he lost, he was blaming everybody from the refs to the players to the parents to social statuses. And he was telling LSU fans that they're spoiled and stuff. And that dude, Brian Kelly, is just a freaking loser. Like there's a possibility that he coaches UCLA. I will not root for a Brian Kelly team. I hate that dude. I hate people like that guy who are just incapable of saying, yeah, I played a part in this loss here too. And I'm not expecting JJ to like sit down and be like, pour his soul out there and be like, I'm so sorry, you guys. We just didn't have it and it's my fault. Like, I'm not expecting that. I do, though, think that at some point, if he's going to go so hard to call out his players in the way that he did, he also needs to be that kind of, he needs to show that kind of scrutiny publicly in that moment as well. And with himself, because it's easy after the fact to be like, yeah, I went back and I looked at the tape and I could have done this. I should have done this. And I should like, the thing about these pressers from a coach's perspective is smart coaches use them over the course of their careers to take a deep breath and be cool in the moment, given that temperatures are still high, questions can be annoying. You have these people who are, who write about the sport, who, we know the way that NBA players feel about us, us in the media. Like, we know that they look at us and they see a bunch of nerds who can't make an offhanded layup and stuff like that. Um, and there's a level of frustration when non-athletes ask athletes or non-coaches ask coaches about why a coach or a player came up short. And so, like, still in that moment when those temperatures are high and you're annoyed at some of the questions that you get, like, that's where you should be practicing, or honing the skill set of, okay, that sucked. Let's take some questions. Go. Whereas, like, in that, like, he just comes off petulant. It's like that the bullshit response that he had to the beat reporter or to the reporter who asked him about not making any subs in the second half of a playoff game. Oh, what? You're only asking me because I don't have experience. Well, one, yeah, and two, you didn't make any subs in the second half of a playoff game. How do you not expect to be asked about that after you do something so ridiculous? And so, like, I don't know. This was the first kind of test that he had in this regard. And to me, I thought he failed it, even though I kind of agree with it a little, like with some of what he said. I agree that, like, the players, you know, needed to show up better and maintain a higher level of respect for their competition and for this league where basketball is played at the highest level of anywhere in the world. Like, yes, the players need to wear that loss too. But if a team is consistently slow in third quarters, or if a team doesn't show up for the beginning of a game, at some point, JJ, that might reflect poorly on you. And at some point, you need to sit down in that press conference and be like, look, I don't know what I am doing wrong here. Clearly, I'm doing something wrong. Clearly, there's something more that I can be doing to relate to these players and get them to understand how important it is to get off to better starts in either half. I need to do X, Y, or Z a little bit better or differently. And just by saying that out loud, you'll have some guys just kind of say, like, all right, we're all in this together. We're all learning, or we're all trying to grow together. And I think that's an important thing for coaches to be able to do. And like BC is saying, Phil Jackson never did that. Okay. Like, Phil Jackson, one, was singularly talented in the strategies of the game and at the understanding of the people that he was coaching. So if he felt the need to do that, or didn't, I am pretty sure though that there were times that, like, even if he even if he didn't say it publicly, and also Jackson had a track record that it's kind of difficult to question. But what I will say though is, all right, here's what I'll say. Phil Jackson, when he won all those championships, was out ahead of the game in a couple of regards. The triangle offense was kind of revolutionary. He understood how to get to superstars like Shaq, like Kobe, like Jordan, like Pippen, um, and like Powell, and so on and so forth. Um, and he had all of that success. But once the triangle became kind of outdated, Jackson's spiel wore thin on people, and not just players, organizations. Like, it got to a point where, like, how many people outside of the Lakers kind of universe are reaching out to Phil Jackson for advice on this stuff. Like, he kind of became an outsider to this league that he at one point was dominant over as a head coach. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like, by the time he was, about done and was getting ready to retire, he had lost a grip with, or lost touch with, the people and the players that he was coaching or working with. So, yeah, like Phil Jackson, ironically, is a pretty good example in that, like, while he was singularly talented in this one regard there for a while, when that dissipated and he didn't have his people skills to build off of, you kind of saw him become a bit of a joke, right? Like, he had the posse comment with LeBron that cost the Knicks from the ability to ever employ LeBron. It didn't go, like, he had the "How's it going" tweet that is now a meme, right? When he was making fun of how many teams are shooting the three-pointer. Like, he became a bit of a joke at the end of his career. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that he was kind of a dick and he was kind of difficult to work with in a way that extends beyond, like, the typical dickishness that you see from very talented people. So, yeah, and by the way, JJ Redick, no Phil Jackson, needs to be said, right? Like, we should maybe point out the fact that, like, Phil Jackson is several tiers above JJ Redick, and if JJ Redick is already this kind of deal difficult to deal with on a regular season loss on a Saturday night in November, then, as the heat rises and as the pressure ratchets up, how's he going to handle that? To this point, like, based on what we've seen from him to this point, it's not going to go very well, and it'll continue to not go very well. Lakers fan BDA writes, "Do you truly believe the Lakers can win with Luka's style of play?" Man, you guys are bringing it today. I think this is a little bit of an overreaction to the game, because this question wouldn't have been asked, I don't think, if the Lakers wouldn't have been embarrassed by Atlanta. All right, long long answer short, I would say no. I don't think you can win through heliocentric offense anymore, and that your main creator needs to be a threat whether he has the ball or doesn't. Now, that said, I think the Lakers understand that, and we have seen more of Luka setting screens off or on the ball. We have seen Austin have the ball a little bit more. We'll see what it looks like when LeBron comes back, and what the offense looks like there. So, like, I don't think this is something that we necessarily have to worry about all that much, because there are good enough creators on the team that if they aren't being utilized as other creators should be, of their level, then they would just be kind of wasted. And I don't think JJ Redick is in the business of wasting creators like Austin, like LeBron. So, um, yeah, if it was just Luka and the Lakers were reliant solely on the Luka Doncic offense, no, I don't think that can win you a championship. I just also don't think that the Lakers are going to be that level of reliant upon Luka Doncic. Oh, wrong button again. Well done. All right, the next question here comes from, let's see, Maestra. It's one game. We will be back, Anthony. Yeah, like I said, I am far more on the side of this was a one-off. Everybody has bad games, yada yada yada. Now, if we see any version of that again on Monday, where we get back-to-back ugly games like that, that's where I will start to say, like, hey, you can't say how much, like, the Clippers are kind of going through this too right now, where and my friend Justin, who covers the Clippers independently, wrote basically how the Clippers are saying all the right things, but the actions kind of speak differently from the message that they're trying to send verbally and publicly. And at some point, it's like, you could talk to me about all the good habits that you're trying to implement and that you're trying to build and what is needed to win basketball games in the NBA. You could talk to me all about that all you want, but if all we see are losing habits, then are you just a losing team until that changes? And I think, with all of the things that were said for the most part coming out of that game against Atlanta, they were mostly good things to hear and good things for the Lakers to say there. But if all of that is followed up with another stinker to another team that is below the Lakers level, then I do think at that point we do kind of have to say, like, all right, this is now a little bit more than a blip. Might not be a trend, but it is a blip on the radar that needs to be corrected quickly. So I am with you for the most part in that, like, I'm not gonna. You guys saw me. I recorded the quick little clip for offside afterward. I wasn't angry really about it. I was annoyed, but I wasn't sitting there like kicking couches and stuff over the way that game went. Um, what I would be tweaked over is if that continues, if that is who the Lakers become, for anything more than, one game here or one game there. Let's see. The next question here comes from Voltaire 101. They need AR out there. They play like a team with him, not scared to piss off Luka. I always see this, that like the Lakers are like passing to Luka or trying to get Luka the ball a little bit more because they're scared of Luka. I see this sometimes, and I do think they are overly reliant on Luka when he gets there at times. But I don't think it's a matter of like, oh God, I got to give Luka the ball or else what happens? I don't think it's a matter of that. Where I do think that they need Austin is so that in those minutes that Luka isn't out there, they aren't such a disaster. And in those minutes where Austin and Luka are out there, the offense becomes that much more dynamic. It was funny. I went. My wife and I, we went to our her parents yesterday, and I do basically all of my grilling at this point because of the way that our patio is structured. I basically do all of my cooking outside on a gas grill, and man, do I miss cooking on a Weber or cooking in a smoker or anything like that. And we can't do it because if I did cook in that stuff, then the smoke would get into the house way too easily. Um, and so we went over to my in-laws, and my father-in-law cooked on a Weber, and you bite into it and it just had like a different depth of flavor than cooking on a gas grill provides. And I kind of feel like that's what AR is, when the Lakers have Luka available, is that like, yeah, Luka is basically your gas grill, who every time you open up the hood and you turn on the heat, and like, chances are you're gonna get a good solid cook on the meat that you cook on a gas grill. But when you cook on a Weber, or if you cook in a smoker and you understand how to um have those smoky flavors complement the stuff that you're doing, with seasoning and stuff like that, it's just a different depth of flavor. And Austin is, to me, the Weber grill, where you use the charcoal. He's the mesquite charcoal that you throw in there onto a steak, and afterward, like, you get all the normal flavors from a steak, but then at the very, very end, it's like, oh dang, what was that last little thing? And I think that's what Austin can do for the offense, where it goes from good, if not really good, to wow. And then whenever, LeBron gets there, I think the offense has a real chance to go from like good to ooh, really good to holy shit. What did you do to this piece of meat? And how do I learn how to do that? All right. I am probably going to call this one here. There are some extra questions here. So what I'm going to probably do is find um a couple extra questions here, maybe write in my Substack, because I haven't written in a little while. Um and then throw to the rest of the. We have a busy week ahead. We have a Harrison Day. We have a couple extra fun guests. The Lakers are on a road trip, which means we'll get plenty of Raj on the show this week as well. So yeah, buckle up. We are in it. This was the first punch to the face. This is the first kick to the nuts that the Lakers have kind of given us. We're going to see how they respond to it. We'll see how we respond to it. And it's going to tell us a lot about ourselves and about this team. So I'm kind of looking forward to that as well. So until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Subscribe, rate, review, like, share, all that good stuff. Have a good one, everybody.